And today I'm going to present one of the outputs of the Wind Valley project. So this paper is a collaboration between people here in Cork and people from Tanzania. And it's titled Community Perceptions on Risk and Investments in Wind Energy Projects. So there is me there, Dorcas Mikindani, my three supervisors, John O'Brien, Paul Leaf, and Peter Dean, and some professors from Tanzania, Jeremiah Makindala and Julius Fowler. Just to give you a quick abstract of what this paper is about. So in this study, we examine community investment in onshore wind energy by using two theories. We're using prospect theory and diffusion of innovation theory. And we're focusing on how risk preferences, some experiences with renewable energy, and some socio-demographic factors like age, gender, or education can shape these decisions in two countries, Ireland and Tanzania. In terms of the contents outline, so I'll take you through an introduction. We'll see a bit of literature review, some theories, as I mentioned that we are going to use two theories, material and method, we'll go through the results, some takeaways, and then I'll conclude. Okay. Maybe I should start by saying that we really do need wind energy if we want to achieve our sustainable and low carbon energy futures goals. But however, researchers, or I can say like maybe stakeholders, have been focusing on technical, economic, and policy factors and forgetting or maybe kind of disregarding social acceptance and participation of the local communities. But these are very important. So as wind turbines reach the end of the operational lifespan, let's say 20 or 25 years or 30 years of operation, there are new opportunities which arise for energy communities to invest in their nearby wind farms. But what we're trying to look here is there a risk appetite, or are the community or energy community really interested in investing in this kind of projects? So in this time, we're going to explore if risk perception toward investment in wind energy projects are there, and we're going to place a particular focus on social acceptance, investment, and opportunities in aging wind farms. So we have three research questions. Number one is, what is the risk preference toward investment in onshore wind farms? Number two is, when prior experience, let's say you knowing about wind farm or wind energy, or you being close to a wind farm, affect your acceptability of wind farm? And number three, are there any other factors which kind of affect perceptions toward acceptability of local wind farms? So I mentioned two countries. So why two countries? Why Ireland and Tanzania? If you look at these maps here, first of all, I have to mention that Ireland is 10 times lesser than Tanzania, so don't ignore kind of the size of the maps. But if you look at these maps here, red shows high speed of wind. So there's plenty of wind where the area is red. So you see that in the middle part of Tanzania and all this coast of Ireland, we have plenty of winds. But there is massive development of wind energy in Ireland, but almost none in Tanzania. So the potential is there for both places, but people are doing something here and people are doing nothing, almost nothing. So a bit of the literature, we see that over the past 2 decades, we have shifted our capacity of wind energy from gigawatts to terawatts. So we are improving. And this has resulted into tremendous reduction of the metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions. So, but despite this progress, still we have challenges when it comes to community acceptance. People have their many reasons of why they don't like wind farms. So a growing body of literature has focused on social license as the central to the point of availability. We see a study from Northern Night saying that citizen investment is positively correlated to the community acceptance. So if people will accept these projects, it's likely investment is going to go up. And in a further study being conducted by the same Northern Hagen, they found that sometimes developers will even kind of include citizens or nearby community to invest in wind farms just to kind of boost their acceptance, not for financial reasons. So while such acceptance is vital, the literature indicates that community investment decisions are influenced by broader risk perception. Some is demographic, some are like proximity, being close to the wind farm, some are like risk, you put your money to it, you want returns. So there are a wide range of reasons why people accept this wind farm, not just your perception. So the literature clearly shows that community perception toward wind energy are shaped by a complex interplay of these factors. So social acceptance is sufficient, but it's not the only factor which kind of what will lead to boost this investment. So this kind of interplay of literature drives us to say that in the future, we have to consider more than just what communities think about the wind energy, but how their perceptions are shaped and can be transformed into shared commitments toward this kind of investment. Okay, moving to theory, I said that we are going to base our analysis by using two theories. We have the prospect theory and the future of innovation theory. So our first theory, we are saying that this theory was developed by Hannan and Tversky, which explains how individuals evaluate potential outcomes. So if we call back the normal economic behavior theory, we say that people are rational. But in this theory, we assume that people are not rational. So if somebody has a past positive experience with wind energy, their perception of wind energy is a low risk investment perception. But if somebody has a past negative experience with wind energy, they perceive that wind energy as an opportunity to recoup or make up for the prior losses. So it goes kind of against for the normal intuitive maximization theory and uncertainty. So using this theory, we are going to determine if a person is a risk averse or risk tolerant. And this theory provides a ground to decode whether a person is risk averse or tolerant based on the survey question we'll talk about in a few minutes. The second theory is called a diffusion of innovation theory. So this was developed by Everett Rogers in 1995. And this provides a framework for understanding how and when ideas, practices, or technologies spread its propagation over time. So here we have 5 major groups. We have innovators, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. So we are saying that, for example, in Ireland, we are showing that people are in group here. The innovators, early adopters, and early majority, because the technology has been there for some time. So people know what wind energy is, people have witnessed it, people have experience to it. But for example, for Tanzania, we have late majority and laggards because the technology has been there for some time, but they haven't adopted it. So we'll see how this affects our analysis later. Okay, moving on to hypothesis. So based on our 3 questions, we have the 3 same hypotheses. Number 1, we are asking if individuals with higher risk tolerance are more likely to invest in an offshore wind farms. So the more you're risk tolerant or the more you're risk taker, are you likely to invest in wind farm? But number 2, with prior experience, whether it's through location being close to a wind farm or education, let's say you are aware of renewables, will it increase individuals' acceptability of wind local energy projects? That's our second hypothesis. And the third one is other factors, other demographic factors like attitudinal, contextual factors such as age, gender, proximity, knowledge of climate change, stuff like that. And they have any significant influence on the acceptability of local wind farms or renewable energy projects. So these are our 3 hypotheses. Moving to materials and methods. So as I said, we are using 2 countries, Ireland and Tanzania. Why? Because even though they all have potential for wind energy, almost similar potential, but they have different practices in wind energy. They have different levels of economic. Ireland is more developed, Tanzania is still in the middle income level, but also like even the power generation is kind of different. So we have renewable in Tanzania, but they are mainly solar, but in Ireland we have plenty of wind and solar, a mix of that. But also like even the nature of the power system, it is privatized, we have people selling gas, we have people doing wind, we have people doing solar, but in Tanzania, it's just a central system. So one person, the government providing electricity for all. So all this variation kind of help us to understand why people behave the way they behave when it comes to renewable energy investments. So we did a survey and we used 26 questions having 3 parts. Part 1, we are focusing on measuring the risk of a person. So in that part 1, we have some questions which when we fill them, we will be able to know using the prospect theory if you're risk tolerant or you're risk averse. And then after that, we are asking you directly for you to rank yourself. Are you a risk tolerant person or are you a risk averse person? But part 2, we are focusing on sustainability questions, asking if you know about renewables, if maybe you are choosing an energy provider, are you looking for price or are you looking if it's selling the community, selling the environment, stuff like that. Then part C is all demographic characteristics, your age, your gender, level of education, stuff like that. So based on our analysis, and because our primary dependent variable is ordered, the question is saying that if you have the ability and you have the willingness to invest in wind farm, how likely are you going to invest? Less likely, more likely, somewhat likely, never likely, unlikely. So it's ordered. So we are using an ordered logistic regression model, or as other people call it, proportional odds model. So based on our 3 research questions, based on our 3 hypotheses, we have 3 questions as well, which are going to conduct regressions within. So if we see that in our question 1 here, we have our dependent variable against risk. So we have self-assessed risk and questionnaire-based assessed risk. Then we have so we have experience here, which we measure using location and education. Then we have all other factors. Okay, now to the good part, the results. So I can spend the whole day talking about this table here, but I don't have the whole day, so I'll just kind of pick, which is most important, because there is so much to talk about in this table. So what we have here, we have the questions of the questionnaire, how we classify them, then the answers, then the results for Ireland and for Tanzania. This is just a descriptive statistic. So for example, if we look at, let's start with risk, because that's our main goal. So if you go to risk here, risk tolerant, risk average, risk neutral, we see that in Tanzania, 66% they are risk average, but just 50 are risk average in Ireland. So Tanzania's people are kind of going back, like, I don't want this, I don't want that. Okay, but also if you go check at the education, you see that in Ireland, most people have college or university degrees, but in Tanzania, 58% primary and 33% no education. So that's a problem there. But also if you look at gender, like the way people are kind of participating in this kind of surveys, you see that in Ireland it's almost like similar, 46 to 52. But in Tanzania, 69 to 30. So it's like more male-based compared to female. So we can say what about that? For example, if you go in question 1 there, like likeness to invest, you see that in Tanzania we have somewhat likely 41%, but in Ireland it's 9%. It's kind of evenly distributed in Ireland compared to Tanzania. Tanzania is more skewed. Okay. So as I said, I can talk a lot about this here, but maybe that's for the part, so I'll just go ahead. Maybe if you want it further, we just share the slide later. Okay, so moving on to risk preference. So I said that when we were measuring risk, we measured risk by assigning you some questions. So when you fill them, we know if you're a risk taker or risk averse, but also we kind of directly asked you if you're a risk taker or risk averse. So we have risk 1, which is your response by self-ranking, and you have risk 2, which is we ranking you. So if you look at Tanzania and Ireland here, in Ireland, the answers are kind of similar. Like if you ask a person if you are a risk taker and if you rank them, it's almost the same. But in Tanzania, it's too much irregular. So what I'm saying is, okay, so what I'm saying is Tanzanians are kind of mismatching what they are saying when asked and what really are their attitude when it comes to risk. But in Ireland, people know what they are talking about when it comes to risk. And that's a very important finding because it has an implication on our regression analysis. So moving on to our hypothesis and the answers. So the first one was to see the effect of risk on investment. And according to theory, we are showing that if somebody is a risk tolerant, they are likely to invest. And that is proven by the results from what? From Ireland. So we see here that it's very significant for Ireland that the more you are a risk tolerant, moving from let's say 0 to 1, the more you're likely to invest in wind farms. But in Tanzania, the results came out different. Like people who are risk taker are more likely to what? People who are risk averse are more likely to invest. And the results are significant as well. So this is kind of contradictory. But this can be explained by how the distribution of the responses were. Like we had so many people who didn't even know about risk in Tanzania, they don't have education, they know about renewables. So maybe this was likely to happen. When it comes to risk score 2, which is not self-assessed, which is assessed from the questions. So we see that the relationship is still positive in Ireland. So still, if you are a tolerant person, you are likely to make investment in wind farms, but it's not significant. So it's the same to Tanzania now. It's positive, but not significant as well. Moving to hypothesis 2, which we are looking at a prior experience with wind farm on investment decisions. So we see that it is positive in what? In Ireland, meaning that if you have seen a wind farm, you're already close to it. If you know about it, you're likely to invest in it. So that's what the positive relationship says, and it's significant for education part, but it's not significant for Tanzania, and it's negative as well. So maybe the nature of the responses coming from Tanzania and other demographic factors affect this kind of results. So moving to the last in the bigger table now. Now in this last model, we are trying to capture everything. Okay, so if we check at the risk, it's the same. It's positive for Ireland and behaving the same for Tanzania. Location is not significant. Okay, we have investment 1, investment 2. Investment 1 is if you are going to invest in wind farm, how much rate of return are you expecting? Investment 2 is how much money in actual amount are you willing to make? So they're all behaving according to theory, but it's different in Tanzania. And if you notice that most of the answers in Ireland, they are statistically significant, at least what? At least to 10%. But most of the answers in Tanzania, they're not statistically significant. The only significant part is this one, which is electricity, which is farm, and we have investment 2, but others are behaving not according to what we expected them to behave. Another important consideration to note is like in Ireland, we see that male are more likely to invest than female. Female are more likely to invest than male, but in Tanzania, male are more likely to invest than female. Also, in terms of age, if you are younger, you are more likely to invest, but if you are older, so it's negative. Okay, if you are older, you are less likely to invest. Okay, takeaways because I don't have time. So what does this tell us in general? So the cross-country comparison reveals a marked difference in both the strength, okay, and the nature of predictors influencing investment decisions. So of course, the empirical results align with the theories as we expected. In Ireland, statistically significant effect from certain predictors, such as education and past investment experience, suggest a population that has developed, informed, and nuanced risk perception, different from Tanzania. If we go back to the definition of innovation theory, so in Tanzania, many predictors show that Tanzanians are laggards and late majority, but Ireland, they are innovators and early majority. Okay, so this may point to structural and contextual differences in emerging markets, such that Tanzania constraints like limited disposable income, policy uncertainty, lack of practical exposure to renewable investment, could dilute the effect of attitudinal variables such as risk tolerance. So what we need is this finding implies that the policy intervention aimed at increasing renewable investment in Tanzania may need to address foundational barriers before attitudinal changes. So before moving into thinking what people are drawn towards, we have to make them aware first what they're dealing with. Finalize on conclusion. So the slide addresses 3 questions I talked about. What are the risk preferences, will experience influence, acceptability, and other factors which influence acceptability. And the finding reveals that risk preference toward wind investment varies significantly between communities with prior exposure and those without, as in the case for Ireland and Tanzania. So the limitation of this study lies in the nature of the respondents for data collection. As I said, that the data was really skewed for Tanzania because people were not educated. Like 33% had no education at all, and 60% just primary education. Most of them didn't know about wind energy or mostly renewables, but in Ireland it's different, and that's why the results align to the theory in Ireland, but not to Tanzania. Suggestions, this is a working paper, so suggestions are welcome to